Councillor Boyd Elliott, Chair of the committee. I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Overview Committee that is being broadcast live and recorded for publication. Go to agenda item 1, which is the minutes of the previous meeting, and to ask the committee, those that were there, to approve the minutes. All in favour, show of hands. Yeah, Glenn? Yeah, you're good. Okay, that's fine. I'll sign those shortly. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence.
Yes, so I've got apologies from Councillor Roger Jackson for medical illness reasons. Councillor Callum Bailey is subbing for him today. I've got apologies from Councillor Steve Carr for medical illness reasons, and apologies from Councillor Dave Shaw for other reasons.
It was well last night. Enough last night.
Okay, right, that's fine. Okay. Agenda item 3. Okay. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. If any councillor or officer has any interest in any matter on the agenda, you should declare it now. Please raise your hand. Now, if you have an interest to declare, you should state what type of interest it is and give some details. Yep. Okay. Agenda item 4 is to note the membership changes of the Overview Committee. So I will note the appointment at full council on the 27th of February this year, 2025, of Councillor Tom Hollis as Vice Chairman of the Overview Committee for the remainder of the 24-25 municipal year. So the next couple of hours.
Yeah, a couple of hours.
Well, hour.
It's the send out spot.
Yeah. Okay, so that's just for noting. So we go to agenda item.
Sorry, Chairman, we've also had a membership change.
Oh, membership change.
To enable Councillor Hollis to come onto the committee.
Right.
Councillor Purdue Horan is no longer a member.
Okay,
We'll just say it. For other speakers, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, just to thank the council for appointing me as the vice chairman. Like I said, it's the send out spot, but mainly to thank Councillor Purdue Horan and put on record actually the hard work and diligence he's done leading our group on this committee. Obviously things like revelations I think we've had at full council have all stemmed from the information from this committee, and I think it's been good, and he tells me we'll work cross party, and that's exactly what you'll get from me here as well. But yeah, I just wanted to put on record the hard work from Francis on this committee.
Thank you. While we're there, I'd just like to thank Glyn for being an exemplary vice chair. I've enjoyed working with you. It's been good. Great. We've had some great work done, and if you can continue that, cross party, we have done great cross party, and just carry that on going forward. So thank you to Councillor Guilfoyle. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 5, which is the budget monitoring report. I've got Councillor Richard Jackson here, who is the Cabinet Member for Finance, regular at this committee, to introduce the report. Over to you, Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Boyd. As you say, quite rigorous. I'm not going to patronise colleagues by going through the report word by word. You all know what it is regularly. We publish it monthly. All groups and non-aligned members as well are offered briefings as it's published monthly. We're not required to do that. You can see news reports of several bits of bad news because all councils are doing it quarterly. We do it monthly because it's good practice, and it keeps a very close eye on spending throughout the council. You will see the table on the first page there, page 9 of the bundle, the dates of the published. The summary, which is on page 13, £300,000 overspend as we stand at the moment, and that's in the context of £650,000 plus budget. So incredibly close to budget with overspend and underspend, which is detailed throughout the report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Nigel, anything else to add?
Nothing further.
Before I open it up, I'll move the recommendation. Voting actually, but there is one recommendation on page 13 of the report, and ask for a seconder. Second. Okay, thank you, Mike. Cheers. Okay, open that up. If anyone would like to.
Yeah.
So, Jim.
Yeah, just on page 14. What's on the transformative prospect? What prospect will there be to mitigate against aspiring cost of care? You mentioned aspiring cost of care there. Have we got any mitigations or planned mitigations?
If I may.
Yeah, can I come in, Nigel?
As we set the budget last week, that included an awful lot of pressures that are in adult social care to represent some of those issues on care. But we have to remember that both adult social care and children's social care budgets are demand. Demand led. So you never know exactly who's coming through the door and what their needs will be. I hope you can manage the market and the increasing costs in the market. But again, it depends on where the economy goes with additional costs in the market. So I always try and say that we set a budget in anticipation. We know it's going to be wrong, but we hope that we're going to be wrong by a smaller amount. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, two big things that are important for the chairman. The first is prevention. So we're investing heavily, not just through social care, but through the health budget. But it's a medium to long term payback, because obviously if we can prevent the need for people to need expensive care in the future, it's not just financially good, but it's what people want. They want in later life. So that's really important. And when there are pressures on budgets, that's an easy one to drop. Something that we're not prepared to do in the long term. And the second is the tech-enabled care.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is already coming back, and quite well as well. So.
Brilliant. Thank you. Glenn, do you have a question? Councillor Guilford?
Yeah, it's just following on the same thing, because obviously for the overspend was 6 million. I know we got the 3.4 in relation to technologies coming in. Obviously, the total was 7 million that we projected that we'd do in savings. So there's a bit of a gap between. I just wondered what those projects were and how we're getting on with that. And the other one is about, because we know we've got a number of people that are living longer, the number of elderly people is growing in comparison to the other end to a degree. I just wondered what projections we're doing on that demand. Is there any way that we can, forecast forward in the sense of, we like we do with school numbers, we know that there are a number of people coming in and we go, right, we need excellent school places. Is there anything that, with our partners in health, we're looking at? We will have X amount of 70-year-olds. The percentage of those that we normally get that need care, etc., is X. So therefore, we can say we will near enough need this, because I think one of the problems is, in my 28 years of being a county councillor, every year it seems social care is the one that's overspent. For differing reasons in some cases, because many years ago they used to have children's services, some of the children's services within social care at that particular time, and it used to be some of the issues that we've got now in children's that were a particular issue. But it's always been the case where social care, 90%, I mean, sometimes it was on the map, but a lot of the time where it's been overspent. And I just wondered whether, all of us, nobody blames it, all through the years being in control of the council, what we've done about projecting that now we know some of the issues. And then the other issue that I think sort of creates the other unponderable is the integrated care board. And the fact that they have got a serious issue with their finances, as I understand it, and one of those is where they're negotiating with us about who they will pay for and who they won't pay for. And one of the sad things about that, I know for basketball people, is that now that we're in this side, as opposed to being in the other side, wasn't a problem for basketball people, but it's now becoming an issue because we're all under the same umbrella, although still using South Yorkshire's, because of the trust status, we still use their services. But that to me, probably in the way, I know they've got a problem with overspend, but to actually get down to where they're going, well, you can have care, you can't, and probably trying to on the nitty gritty of it, not pay for it, which then the burden becomes ours. I just think that is something that, for me, it's going to continue on, because they're not going to resolve, as I understand it, their financial issues even next year, are they? We're going to be in the same position. So, but just though, if those answers, and I know you probably haven't got answers for it, but
I mean, on the first part of your question, it's exactly as Nigel said earlier on. It's predicting demand. It's just so difficult, and we've got sort of hangover from COVID now and elective surgery, and that bubble sort of working its way through the system, which is difficult to do. I guess it's for another committee to question adult social care, senior officers separately as to the specific program. We do keep a very close eye on those things, and they will tell you that a lot of the savings have been delivered and have avoided costs, and without those sort of savings, it's larger still, but it is a huge frustration. And it's different, obviously, to something like a place where if you reach your budget, you can stop spending for the last few months of the year, effectively, whereas we're never going to do that in adult social care, when obviously care need, we are going to meet it and find the money somewhere. But I suppose for the purpose of this meeting, it's just an assurance that we monitor it incredibly closely. This is a kind of summary of where we are, so we will come about it. As far as the ICB, I think sort of, and I don't know what the solution is. We've got two public funded bodies supposed to the same aim, almost as loggerheads with funding, and if one's pushing back on the other, then it's not going to balance. I think it needs a kind of national intervention, which is anything else, quite honestly. We're taking a different approach than another authority locally on it, in that we're working collaboratively, at least trying to work through that rather than going sort of hardball and threatening all sorts of things where payments aren't being made. And I think that is the right approach. It is bearing some fruit, but it's an incredibly complex situation these days. And again, it's a risk that we're aware of. And some of these things are rolled forward into next year's budget, which we approved a month ago. That's a week ago.
Just feels like.
Yeah. So some of these are permanent pressures, which are absorbed and rolled future years' budgets. Some of them are pressures which we are determined to push down.
If I may, building on what Richard has said, it is a very complex area, as you know, in terms of the number of factors or risks, you want to say, in terms of determining or plays on the adult social care budget. It's not just the number of people, it's about their ability to pay, as well as health inequalities in a particular area. You can't necessarily predict the net cost. You might be able to predict the gross cost based on simple numbers of we're getting an older population, so you know that there are more people going to come into the system, but you don't know specifically what their needs are going to be, what their ability to pay or make a contribution towards it. Plus, of course, as you mentioned, there's the ICB, but you also have to remember there's the statutory responsibility, as Richard said, between health and adult social care. They are two separate things that they've got their own responsibilities. I didn't want you to walk away and thinking that health are trying to push their health responsibilities onto local authority, and likewise the local authority is not trying to push on adult social care responsibilities onto health. But there are grey areas between that in terms of what is that care. What's the grey area? Because obviously, in one sense it sounds like it's clear cut. Hold on a minute, it's nursing care.
Yeah.
And you need nursing care, and as I understand it, once it's nursing care, ICB should pick that total cost up.
It becomes,
If it's not nursing care and it's general social care, that's where we get involved and we pick that up. And then there's also the other side, which is then you look at the financial ability of the individuals to actually pay. Now, I think I'm right, nursing care, if we don't pay at all, the cost is met fully by the ICB to a degree.
yeah, it's not quite as simple as that. And I'll go what Richard said, to do something for
Something
to look at. But I'll speak from personal experience in terms of my mother-in-law went into that. Is it also, you have to remember, there's personal choice in terms of family, in terms of where your parent goes, which although may have identified nursing care, you still may put them in a location that doesn't provide nursing care. So it still then falls to the local authority to pick up the cost if they're
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean about it. It's not as
No.
not as
Correct.
black and white.
Okay.
Thank you. No, yeah, there's a lot we could go into with that, but I think we need to go to the health scrutiny that a bit more, and we can look at people coming out of health into our care as well, because there was always an issue with delayed transfer, wasn't getting them out. Now you've got a nameplate, I can bring you in, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Fole, yep, okay.
Yes, thanks very much. Yeah, it is really complex, isn't it, really? And of course, the children and adults, you know, if they kind of come into care, need a care package, you can't turn them away, can you? So I realise it's really, really difficult. Okay, just a couple of things then. I wanted to pick up the internal foster care comment, which is in paragraph 4. I'd just like to understand a little bit better what the current state of play is. What are the main factors now in the reductions we're seeing in internal foster carers? I know, because I know the numbers have been declining, haven't they, recently? I know we had some money in our alternative budget for this to see whether or not, and we were advised that if we could put some money into some adaptations, so some of foster carers could actually perhaps take another sibling, or that actually would work. But that's one suggestion that I think might work. But is there anything else that we could do to kind of help more of our internal foster carers? I just wanted to pick up too, as you may imagine, the SEND provision. Again, we have had some more money for SEND, haven't we? And we were going to put a bit more money into it. I just want to know where we are in terms of shortfall for that. So I suppose the question is, from a financial perspective, I know that's what we're focusing on today, how would you rate the work that's being undertaken to improve SEND provision so we get more assessments done and more children with the care that they need?
On foster carers, first of all, we're actually, for the first time in a long time, seeing an increase in foster carers registering. And it's a net increase, so there's more registering than deregistering,
Okay.
which is turning around, and it's a lot of work that's going on because we've moved into this detail into collaboration.
Yeah.
So I think that's good news, and that means obviously it needs to carry on the best place for the kids, quite apart from the financial implications of it. You mentioned the £900,000, which was in your budget amendment. We actually do it already, and it contingency. Quite a bit of it. There isn't a specific ring fence budget for it. But we have. So, for example, there's an age, and I forget exactly what age it is. It's an age where students can't share a room, etc. So there is provision for that, and we've done things like loft conversions and extensions and
You're doing foster carers now, are you?
Yeah. So there is, we have got evidence of that helping the intention of foster carers, although there's no specific separate budget for it. Nigel, on the SEND spending.
Yeah, we don't include SEND spending in this particular report, but I can touch on it. Is the SEND that comes from the dedicated schools grant, that element, which refers to school transport. It is overspending in terms of provision. That I think it's 13 million pounds overspent. Mostly is driven by costs in the independent sector. Yeah. However, the authority has sufficient reserves to cover that this year. And with the extra money next year, we anticipate will still be about balanced at the end of next year. It will start to become an issue if there isn't future government funding towards that. And of course, you will be aware of the strategy that we've been trying with SEND, which is to try and make more inclusion in terms of schools. Yeah, and I probably welcome the changes that possibly happen in terms of the Ofsted inspections, which will also include in their assessments to ensure that more SEND children are included in school provision, which is a slow turnaround, but it's been decades in the making, so to speak, in terms of the issue with SEND funding, and it will take decades, I imagine, to resolve it. In the meantime, the costs increase, and you'll also be aware of the statutory override that will be significant issues for local authorities. As you were only there last the other week.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. No, it's good. Okay. Inclusive schools are going to be the key to this, aren't they? And it's good that we can put some more money into that. Thank you.
Happy. Just go, Jim. You want to come back in?
Yeah, on the capital receipt, on the bar chart on 32, which shows the forecast capital receipt 27 onward. But item 34 has only got 0.9 million capital receipts at the moment, after predicted 13.4 million.
Yeah.
So I just wonder, is there anything we're actually doing to actually try and receive capital receipts? Because it's a massive gap.
Yeah. Follow this cycle. I sort of anticipated you asking that question. Yeah. So at the end of January, that's stood at 5.2.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is on the cusp, as they would say, of another 8 million. Yeah, which is just down for lawyers in terms of agreeing terms and signing the papers, which means that so that's what I mean about it's touch and go in terms of does it in March or is it in the beginning of April? But we're that close to hitting the target. Yeah, which would mean that it would be close to the 13 million target.
Yeah.
This, I think this is actually one area where I'll welcome overspend. You'll see earlier on in the report there's an overspend in debt, and that's specifically because we've got our partnership working on getting these sales completed, and that's okay. It's overspent that budget by a small amount, but it's caught in the so as I say, the results of that.
Anyone? No one else?
Councillor.
Oh, yeah, just coming back to Councillor Fole on carers. So it's been one of the main work streams of the Children and Families Select Committee, and there's been a recent task and finish group looking at that subject, and it's coming to the Select Committee on, I think it's the 17th of March. I don't know if the agendas and papers have been published. If not, then certainly Councillor Callaghan could fill you in completely on some of the challenges that we've highlighted and some of the suggestions that we've made. Probably the biggest challenge is the fact that there are private companies out there that offer more money to prospective carers, and the part of the challenge is around, well, you know, even if we put our rates up, they can just put theirs up pro rata, and it's just chasing the costs up. So we've tried to look at a number of other issues, which do include things like some of the capital opportunities to help people take on more. But papers are out tomorrow, as Martin said. I've been looking around the table and he sat in front of me, who could have answered it far better than I. But the papers are out tomorrow, and talk to Councillor Callaghan, she'll fill you in completely, because she's been a very valuable contributor to that discussion.
I think, Mike, I knew as soon as this conversation, I knew Councillor Owen was going to come in with foster care.
Well, I will come on to that, but as far as adult social care is concerned, we discussed this the other day, and the biggest factor in the overspend appeared to be the fact that the NHS, the Integrated Board, or whatever it's called, Joint Commissioning, had decided unilaterally that they were no longer going to fund certain elements, and that ran into millions. And we were told on Monday, was it Tuesday? I can't remember, Monday, I think, that we were going to adopt a softly approach, and I was not necessarily convinced that that was really the way forward, though of course you cannot force another organisation to accept its responsibilities. But I think we need to accept that that is a big portion of that overspend in adult social care. And my suggestion was that they ought to be, the board ought to be brought before the Adult Social Care Select Committee to offer explanations to elected members. And I think we need to expose it more publicly than perhaps has been the case hitherto. Now, as far as the children and families are concerned, it's not an unfamiliar situation, the shortage of foster carers. In my time, when I was trusted to run that section politically, it was an issue. We dealt with adoption by setting up an East Midlands or Notts Derby adoption agency, and now it sounds as though you're going to do a similar thing with fostering, which will help. I would be interested to know how many of our potential foster carers have actually been used to foster the unaccompanied asylum seeking children that have been dispersed across the country. And it would be interesting to know how many that has taken out of the system, because therein I suspect lies a problem as well. And the other issue about expensive external placements, again, that is nothing new. And I said in the budget meeting last week, and I've been saying it for a number of years now, that it needs government intervention. There needs to be a cap on these external providers, because I forget who it was it Councillor Introna has said that if we put our fees up, all they do is put theirs up. They poach our foster carers that we train very well, and then they pay them an awful lot more, and we cannot compete in that way. And the money is being sucked out of the system. And I've joked many a time that it's unusual for me as a Conservative to say that we need government intervention, and we certainly do. There needs to be a clear cap put on the profitability, because it's money that's being siphoned out, going into these hedge funds, whatever they are, and is being lost to the system. But we cannot solve it ourselves here. It really does need government intervention to say, there's got to be a standard rate, and perhaps we would see then foster carers coming back to Nottinghamshire and to other local authorities. So I think we're well aware of the problems, because we've been well aware of them for many years, but we've not yet come up with the appropriate solutions, and in some cases we can't.
Thank you, Councillor. Glenn.
Just in relation to the integrated care board, I agree with, which is on, but I will agree.
Well, I'm right.
To say about bringing them, I think it should be overview personally.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
As opposed to health, because it's a bigger issue, and it touches other areas. So I would ask if it could be put on the programme for overview, to ask the integrated care board to actually come to have a discussion about what their role is. The other thing, and I'm just looking at, I'm very grateful for the fact that we've got the East Midland Combined Authority on the members' board access for information, so we can look at their minutes, and if you've got an issue, you can actually find a little bit more out about it. Integrated Care Board, which is another link. Is there any way in which we could set up a link for that, so that we can actually look at some of the minutes and things that are going through there? Because it does have big implications for us, and sometimes, if you don't sit on some of the other scrutiny boards or go to some of the other meetings, you sort of get lost. But if we've got that opportunity to look at what they were doing, we'd be a bit more informed about what's going on, because it is a big organisation that's covering the whole of Nottinghamshire.
Thank you.
It has real implications for the health and welfare of our residents.
Thank you. No.
Yeah.
Tom, you got anything to add?
Yeah, well, actually, before I go on with what I was going to add, I think I'll just pick up on what Glyn has to say. I suppose big boots to fill sitting in the vice chair after he's been sitting there for such a long time. And so I thank him for what he's done on this committee. But just to kind of answer his question, I'm very blessed to be the vice chairman of the governance board at the East Midlands Combined Authority. And that's overseeing, of course, a lot of the changes that are going to be being made. And one of the currently discussed, politically, obviously, members will note that we were very objecting to the fact that it was created in the first place, but when it's there, you've got to work within the system. And it's likely that over time, the combined authority will look to make a number of political moves, of course, to take some of these decisions away from whatever the new councils are going to be. Of course, effectively, we're going to be left with two councils, but just on a bigger scale. And the first thing they're going to look to take is obviously the crime function. Interestingly, the second thing, will be social housing. They look to take social housing off all, but I think the social care element maybe will be a long way down the list. So that must be something with members around this table to discuss, actually, whether hopefully we'll be around the table in the new authority, actually, what we do to look to combine the resource and make sure care isn't forgotten in it all, because it's going to be a big cost, whatever happens. And of course, so it'd be good to actually make sure, Glenn, your groups, I know you've got some really good members on the committee, on the governance committee there, and they're part of this conversation already. But yeah, it's going to be a tough decision going forward, and lots of changes that are all part of this LGR kind of thing. But the blessing, if from my point of view, is the combined authority have been extremely slow with setting up its organisation. I mean, up until 2 weeks ago, they didn't even have a bank account. I think something like 75 to 80% of the staff are currently unfilled. They're just vacant seats. So effectively, they're unable to move. So that puts us at a slight advantage to make sure that we can ask them to be reasonable. Obviously, we'll be probably doing it from either some members will be sitting on a Greater Nottingham Authority and some members will be sitting on the Sherwood Forest Authority in a few years. But whichever desk we sat at, I think it would be important to know that we've got a step ahead. But it's certainly a beast that's going to keep growing. But yeah, so that was just one thing to reassure members. I know Councillor Owen's on the same committee as me from a Nottinghamshire Council perspective. So it'd be good if we've got anything to feed in that I'd like to think we're going to work together on this, because politically I think we're both kind of nervous about the combined authority overstepping. So, but it is very relevant to I think what we're talking about, everything. But if I could just move on to some of the questions that I had, if that's okay from a personal and an opposition group perspective. Paragraph 21 states that local elections will take place in May 2025 and the outcome therefore will impact upon government priorities and the budgets available to local government. I suppose I was just looking for what is meant by this. Surely the outcome of a forthcoming local election to Nottinghamshire County Council will be completely irrelevant to the available budget that this authority in its current, obviously its current form. So why is this sentence included? And then the second point to make, I suppose feeding on to the point I made to Councillor Guilfoyle there is obviously a big issue with the council and something that Nigel and I have spoke about is a multi-year settlement. Of course, the new Labour government have stated that they will return to this, but not until 26-27. So would it be fair to say that this council will never receive a multi-year settlement, and therefore will the MTFS at best will be a guess? Of course, with the new Greater Nottingham and the new Sherwood Forest authorities dissolving this authority in 2029. So then of course, in paragraph 9, it details the economic development and assets management, £0.6 million overspend. The report states that this is because of repair and cleaning budgets have risen. On the 20th of March, this council will be meeting at Oak House, the new HQ. We don't need to debate on whether this cost is 26.5 million or 19.5. What I do know is that the original budget was 11 million. So it represents a massive overspend. And on the 20th of March, our first council meeting will be there, a full 5 weeks before the keys are handed over to Nottinghamshire County Council by the construction company. So the council will be meeting on a building site. Is this a rushed symbolic move? And can I ask whether this rush move has incurred any additional costs? And are these included in the £600,000 overspend that is blamed on the rising costs for cleaning and building repairs? There's 3 questions wrapped up in all that. Thank you.
In reverse order, no, it's not. Okay. The overspend is exactly what it says. It's reported by the 151 officers, so it's accurate.
So the second point was about the MTFS, because I'm supposed to in simple terms, the MTFS is going to come in 2 years before this council's dissolved. So we're only going to get, could say, a 2-year settlement at best.
You can only run for the council activities.
Of course.
And you know as well as anybody when it starts moving on things, they very rarely come on time. Sometimes they don't actually come at all. It's totally responsible to sort of draw stops now and sort of saying, well, we're not going to be here in 3 years, so hang the MTFS and play the old number. So that as it is, whatever replaces us or whether we expand or contract or whatever, somehow.
Well, I think the certainty, to be clear, is we aren't going to, Nottingham County Council will cease to exist.
But somehow, MTFS is across all the relevant authorities that are going to make up whatever shape new authorities are going to take, and you're going to have to be rolled together. So, we've got to keep reporting these things accurately, and not a legal responsibility to do that. It takes very seriously.
If I may, the multi-year settlement question is that the government has committed themselves to doing a 3-year settlement for the work that they're doing through their comprehensive spending review during the spring. For local government, that means we won't still know what that is until the local government settlement in December. So it will still feel next year like a 1-year settlement.
Yes.
Then in future we'll have a multi-year settlement. But then I do take your point that you then put up against what's going to happen in local government review. And today I'd say I don't know what's going to happen. You can't create and say, well, it's up in the air, so I don't know, so I'm just not going to bother. You still have to then portray a set of budget and what your understanding around the MTFS, and you're going to continue in your current form because you don't know whether it's going to happen or not.
Well, I suppose Boyd will give me a sharp jab to the ribs if I'm overstepping, if I'm coming back. But what I suppose to ask you bluntly is it better than a best guess than we normally? Because let's be honest, we've been guessing slightly with the 1-year settlements. Are we a bit more clearer because we're likely to get a multi-year?
You have to be careful in terms of what the interpretation of an MTFS. All organisations create MTFSs, which is where they've got a little bit more certainty next year, and then it gets more cloudy and foggy as you go in future years because you don't know. Particularly for those authorities that have got social care responsibility, don't know what the demand is. Nor would you know next year if there's going to be a shock somewhere in the system, that there's an invasion somewhere and that causes increases in oil prices or shortages in food prices. You just don't know. But that's no excuse for you not to create an MTFS. On the best assumptions and knowledge that you've got at the day, it's no difference to the Chancellor doing a spring announcement and an autumn budget. It always changes from 1 year to the next because their assumptions around the economy changes. But it doesn't mean they're just going to not bother. On your particular point you raised on the bullet point around the political landscape and uncertainty, it felt like you took slight umbrage in terms of the wording that were in there. It's just you took a particular thing around local elections, but the actual paragraph itself refers to all of the uncertainties around the politics, including the previous summer elections, which means that there's changes in government policy. So we don't know. We had a brief discussion this morning in terms of anticipation that there will be changes coming out from government policy, which we don't know, therefore, what that might have on the impact of local government finances going forward. And I thought I'd also, if I may, pick up a bit of the issue or a conversation around the trade and services. Just a point of clarification. What we're saying here on the trade and services one is that it's coming under 600,000 less than we anticipated the subsidy that we'd have to put into those services. So I didn't want a misunderstanding that it's overspending. We did know that we'd have to put in more support for those services because they've been hit by increasing in food prices and increasing in wage, particularly because they're lower wages and they're impacted more by the increases in pay. And the authority took a policy decision not to put prices up for food, for instance, and cleaning straight away, but to rather cushion that and therefore make a subsidy to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So I'm going to ask Martin now.
Yeah, a few points. Councillor Owen in intro did kind of like cover up what I was going to say, but there was good discussion on Monday at Adults about the finance. So if you've not seen it, have a look at the recording. But link to that, I will make a note of it, so include it in the discussions on the development of the work programme that we're happening in June, about how the members feel they want to look at this in more detail and where that would be best and how that would be best. And then we can definitely add the ICB link onto the members portal like we did with the AMCA. I think that is it.
So
on the fostering view, which right, and the fostering view is published tomorrow. It'll be committee week on Monday, and it has been a really good review with lots of members being engaged, and the officers were really supportive as well. And I think members really got to like the bottom, well, really deep down to it, and they've made some quite a good lot of recommendations.
So the recommendation has been moved and seconded. All in favour? It's unanimous. Is there anyone against or abstain? No, everyone. Good. Okay, agenda item 6. Update on the. Richard, Nigel, are you staying, or you want to stay for this?
Since Derek's here for the next two items, Otherwise, we'll take the escape.
Okay, thank you very much.
I've got a financial question.
Okay,
Derek is well aware of all the financial bits.
okay, thank you.
Deputy Section 151.
To the update on the council's climate change activities and climate emergency response. We've got Councillor Clark, Cabinet for Transport and Environment. If you'd like to introduce the report, and then we'll just.
Yep, thanks, Chairman. The clue's in the title. It's climate change activities. This is in the report to remind everybody on the group that the council declared a climate emergency. It's a long time ago now. It's nearly 4 years ago. So the work continues, and the team of officers have been working very hard. And, I'm sure they'll want to make some comments, and thank Alex Smith for a lot of hard work that she has been putting into the process. So thank you for that. On page 31, the paragraph 17 shows you that graph. It shows you we are still on track, albeit it is challenging. And so we need to keep the pressure up, but the main ambition is still there, that we are still working towards the net zero for 2030, and we will continue to do that. I don't know at this stage if anybody wants to
The officers,
or wait for
bring the officers in.
questions.
Bring the officers in now, and they can. You've got a small present. Yep. Okay.
Slides.
Okay.
Right, just to summarise the report and the two appendices in there. So yeah, we've been greenhouse gas emission report now in 2019, our baseline year, and we've reduced our emissions in all of our own activities. This is as a council, as an organisation, by 39.3%. A good significant reduction. That reduction is mainly due with the LED street lighting programme that we've seen across the whole county, but also a reduction in officers and the way we use our officers, so hybrid working has impacted on that. But also we have invested and we have got more renewables and energy efficient officers and other buildings around the estate. So that's the main reason for the reduction. You'll see that there has only been a very small change since the previous year. Our data is slightly behind, so this is 2023 to 24. By the time we gather it, it's normally around autumn time. So we went to the last cabinet for approval of this in January, and yeah, there's only a slight shift, and that is because of the tool we use. So we use the recommended tool of the local government associations tool, which is seen as best practice. And what it does is takes conversion factors of where we take our energy and use our energy from in the UK overall. And the conversion factors are always, again, a bit like our data, slightly behind. And in 2021, it was a particularly calm weather year. So we didn't get much renewables from wind power. So the conversion factors are not best. And you'll see that's kind of reflected when I break it down a little bit in our electricity. This is the graph that Councillor Clark was referring to. We've made really good progress, but we are kind of on the cusp to keep that momentum going to that 2030 goal. The next slide here just shows how we split that down into the different areas of emissions that we currently count. You'll see the 16 and the 21% is about 37% overall, and that the majority of that is with the electricity and heating use of our assets across the country. The highway is also particularly up there as Highways Authority. We include that. We have our staff business travel, and we have the authorities fleet. The transmission and the distribution of losses is our connections and how many connections we have to the grid. It's something that gets put out of the tool when we do it. We have to include that as our emission. In terms of that, going into a bit more detail about the different areas and the comparisons between 2022 to 23, heating has reduced slightly, and moving away from fossil fuel heating. Our authorities fleet between 23 and 24 was pretty stationary, so there was not a huge shift in fleet emissions. The electricity on our buildings, the actual consumption itself only rose by just 1%, but you can see in the table it's 7.7%, and that is the reflection of that increase in conversion factors not helping us out there. Then the same for the electricity on the highways, it's a 39% decrease. We would have normally seen on average years to a bigger decrease than that across the highways, but again, it's electricity, so those conversion factors were impacted. Staff business travel is on the up, so that is one area that's risen by 8.2%. We expect to see a lot of an increase following COVID and work patterns changing, but it does continue to rise, and obviously we would like to see that sort of plateau out at least. We have a carbon reduction plan that's linked to our greenhouse gas emission reporting, how we are going to deliver that reduction. And here we've just got a few things that are happening at the moment and are continuing to happen to keep that reduction plan in place. So in energy in our buildings, we have improved design standards, working with our partnership colleagues. Obviously, we've got Oak House being built at a certain environmental standard. We've got hybrid working, and obviously the building rationalisation programme that's continuing to help with the reduction of emissions. Energy use on our highways, we have the main LED street lighting, street light programme finished, but we do have another project underway that began in October for the next 3 years, which is concentrating on changing LED lights on all lit signs. We'll see that reduction again down the line. In terms of transport, we do have an improved vehicle replacement process now for the 200 fleet vehicles that we have. As and when they are coming up to replacement, how they're going to be replaced, and what if there is a need for their replacement in the first instance, but also what are the alternatives, low emissions. Obviously looking at electric as the main alternative. We've also got hydro-treated vegetable oil pilot in place, so HVO fuel is now certified and able to use. Our colleagues at Fire are already using it, and we are taking what their offer on it, running a pilot with a couple of our buses, which will significantly reduce our emissions if we go that up further across the fleet. Staff business travel, we're doing a lot of work to help change behaviours around this, so e-learning, internet improvement. We've got full car trials happening, and also we're looking at different tools to help support managers who have particularly big, large amount of staff that are having to do a lot of miles. If there's anything we can do for them to reduce that. In Appendix B, we do cover partners' emissions. So for our 2030 target, we include emissions that have already kind of run through. Partners are responsible for their own emissions. However, we work very closely with them because we recognise we have a responsibility in that, and we are working very closely to ensure that they also have their same carbon reduction plans and that their targets and ambitions sort of align with ours. We've highlighted these already, but we do have some of those challenges, a lot surrounded the amount of investment needed and obviously the period of time that will take towards that 2030 target, and then staff business miles still continue to kind of increase in the wrong direction, but lots of activity happening to hopefully start to see that plateau. Last year we had the Nottinghamshire Net Zero Framework published in August. It's an outward facing, really high level strategic document that looks at a bit of a call to action to our wider partners on tackling area-wide emissions, because we've had a lot of focus recent years on that 2030 organisational target, but we're going to look at more outward facing. There was a ask from the last overview committee around hybrid working versus commuting. We did get some data in the recent staff travel survey where over 700 staff employees completed the survey, and based on the average commuting and a conversion factor by the government from 2024 conversion factor for home working, we've been able to do a calculation here. It has to be very we have to make sure we have to not assume, caveated it is, because we don't know how people, obviously at home, you don't know how many people in the house, you don't know how they heat the house, you don't know, lots of different elements that we've had to assume, I guess, with this calculation. But that's where that conversion factor from the government helps us. And obviously we've got a lot of data about commuting and how the distance people are commuting in. And based on what we've found on our calculations, if staff members are travelling for more than 10 miles, then they are starting to emit more emissions than it would be them working at home, based on average home heating and office equipment. I think we've just got two little slides left just to cover other things off that have been happening. Staff engagement and training. We've done a lot of work around carbon literacy training. This is our accredited course that we deliver. We've got over 250 staff members now trained. We've had a members session, and we've got planning a further members session. We've also trained over 150 of our partners to become carbon literate as well. We have an employee screen initiatives group. You aren't aware that's meets on a regular monthly basis, and we do sort of quarterly sessions in person. We're also engaged with children and families with a departmental working group, and we have recently been to the Adults and Social Care Departmental Learning and Celebration event to share what we do. We also have different platforms that we usually use and do an exchange where we keep in touch with staff. Finally, on my last slide, just got about communities and schools and how we've been supporting them. We've got public sector decarbonisation schemes. We've had a couple of successful funding, which is delivered by our property team. There is also pre-funded school climate change programmes that our different organisations are delivering. Let's Go Zero Climate Ambassador Scheme and the National Education Nature part, and we are in touch with all of these for helping to support and promote these to give schools as much support as possible. The Education Safeguarding Health and Wellbeing Hub is also something that's been created in the Children's and Families Department that we have done with them to again communicate to schools everything that about the three schemes above, but also about any grants and funding that's available to them. And then we have a number of community projects underway. We are still chair of the Local Authority Energy Partnership, and that's Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. Involvement in that includes all local authorities. We've got a fast follow project, which has got on a number of events, but it's also been part of the local area energy planning that the combined authority is funding. So it's around the procurement of that and moving that forward with all the different authorities involved. Got the Local Energy Decarbonisation Fund, which is our heat hub project. This has been targeting with Nottingham Energy Partnership homes that are hard to reach and hard to treat homes in able to play areas, giving support and surveys to those homeowners. And then within our growth infrastructure and development group, within the department, there's a lot of work being done around supporting the district's authority to deliver retrofit housing schemes for social and low-income households. And there's also just recently been a new renewable energy project officer coming on board who's going to start supporting with renewables across the county. That includes community.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Excellent. Thank you. So before we open up for questions and debate, I'm going to move the recommendations as set out on page 38 of the bundle and ask for seconder. Okay. Okay. Got Councillor Adams first. You did signal.
Thank you. Yes. Couple of points from me. First of all, I think you continued an incredible job to get that the emissions reduced for the council by that level is on target and looking great. So congratulations again for the work on that. I want to touch on HVOs because it would be remiss of me not to, considering I raised this at Gedling last night. As we start to look at the HVO pilot, there are a number of concerns around the particulate emission size for a start. There's some issues around cold water performance, cold weather performance, I should say, in colder climates, mixing it with diesel. So I'm interested to know, is that something we're doing in this pilot? Damage to rubber seals, gaskets, leaking, all that sort of thing. You know, so it can actually take quite a hard wearing aspect on vehicles. And also the source of HVO, where we're getting that from, what knock-on effect that has on in terms of international markets as well. If we're using all the UK, if all the HVO we're sourcing is from the UK, if that ability to gain HVO because we haven't got the capacity or sustainability in the market yet in the UK, do we then access international HVO, and also subsequently what measures are we putting in place to ensure that HVO we're buying is not from palm oil and just damaging rainforests? In terms of a fuel overall, as things stand, they believe it is positive in terms of its emission, but I do know heavy questions still remain on whether those emissions are safe. I suppose what I wouldn't want us to do, and again I mentioned this last night, is dive. You know, we went to this. There was this mass scrappage scheme. Get rid of your old car, get rid of your old petrol car. Let's have all brand new diesels. Suddenly we had this mass issue with poor air quality in the UK as a result. You know, it's a classic example of a fad. I suppose what I would be concerned about, let's make sure we're not falling into another fad that does have an emission question hanging over it. So yeah, just really around that from me. But in terms of performance wise, I mean, I think to do what you've done in highways in terms of the rollout of the LEDs has been a phenomenal change. You know, that 50% reduction is no mean feat. So yeah, seriously, congratulations on the whole report overall. But HVO is my nagging concern.
Okay, Councillor Clark, do you want to?
Thanks, Chairman. Just for and the officers, yes, the HVO is still obviously a fairly new thing. Although you mentioned Gedling and Rushcliffe have been using HVO for about the last year or so in their HGV vehicles, refuse vehicles, etc. And the signs so far are encouraging. I take the point that maybe some of these issues maybe still have to come out, and that will only happen after a few years trial to see if any other issues do emerge. But as I say, the signs appear to be encouraging that it is helping to reduce the carbon emissions. But yeah, if it does create other problems, then yes, we need to be aware and to check up on that.
Do you want to come in, Mark?
Yeah, I'll come in there then. So yeah, obviously the HVO part of it is a small part of the overall work that we're doing. We've asked a number of very sort of quite specific detailed questions there. So what I'll propose is we'll take away that and bring you provide an answer to overview committee on those particular questions you've asked. As I say, at the moment it's one or two vehicles. We've not gone full scale with it because we aren't in that sort of test and learn phase, and it's it's a small part of our activity, and we're doing other things. Obviously longer term we're trying to look at, can we electrify the fleet, that sort of thing. So HVO was a solution we were looking at with our older fleet, whether that was preferable to, is it better to reduce our carbon, by going down the HVO route, or is it better to not to do that? And that's a question to say we're currently evaluating the feedback to the OP.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that.
Councillor
Yeah, just going back to, it's interesting about the survey of working at home versus travelling. And I just wondered on the, going back to the Oak House, whether that survey, whether it actually predicts whether it's going to be positive or negative moving to Oak House in that, given where they live, some will benefit because they'll be closer, some will be further away. So I wonder if that's been taken, or will there be another survey sometime in the future, because that could affect it positively or negatively.
Yeah, I guess we don't have that information at the moment, and I guess we, as you suggest there, another survey would be as we see how the building is used going forward. We do that other survey and bring that back, but certainly we've got that. You know, the question about is it more carbon effective to work from home or come to the office is something that we're and Alex and the team are looking at. Hone that down, but we'll certainly do that.
So going to Oak House, and I have to say, at the moment, when the houses are built, it might improve, but at the moment, actually, the contact that is getting there is fairly poor, so then people are more likely to get there, so that will affect it anyway. So just wondering how fast these will take into consideration, and how urgent they'll be looked at.
Derek, come in.
Yeah, and just to, it's worth saying that for the majority of staff who are based at Oak House, they're already working in about buildings about a mile away by industrial estate of the customer service. So the majority of based at Oak House, it's not a significant difference from their current central duty.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chairman. This is certainly going to tread old ground here, but this is the first time I've seen any update on the carbon plan since we, well, in a committee perspective, since we declared that climate emergency. I thought I'd pick up on the challenges on 20 and 20 and 21. I'm quite surprised that we still don't know the costs and timescale of decarbonising the council estate. I would have thought after 4 years that would have been the one thing that could have done, and I'm not seeing any timescales of when that may be done. I know that we are moving states and we are constantly changing it, but do we have any information on some of the core states that we do know we're retaining in the future, and have we made the assessments on that? Point 21 about staff business travel. I know made a point about how we'd like to see that plateauing or going down. I suspect that'll be extremely difficult. Since if we are going to be looking more towards working from home as a carbon saving measure, then sometimes that will mean more staff business travel, as they won't be travelling from one of the bases. They'll be travelling from their home, which may mean further business travel. So I suspect that'll be very difficult to plateau if we're going to more towards the working from home. But I think it'll be very difficult to even get any assessment on how that's going to look in the future, because you'll be getting more people getting employed by the council, completely different where they live. So it's definitely a challenge. I'm not sure how I'm meant to address it. I suppose the other one as well is that I think Council Adams always picked up on about the FAS. I know at the Fire Authority, when we're looking at our fleets, I think it's more a gradual approach where as the fleet's been renewed, we're looking at making sure the next batch is more carbon friendly. I suspect that's possibly the approach that the council will be taking. But I suppose on the trial, I'm very surprised that we're the ones doing the trial and it hasn't already been tested. Are we looking at other local authorities about how they're decarbonising their fleets? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Neil Dunn, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, sorry, just comment on that quickly before I hand over. Just on your last points, I think I indicated that other councils are already using HVO. It's been using it for about a year or so, and as I said, the initial results are encouraging. However, I would say that we need to maintain a flexible approach to this, because who knows, might still be another technology that might appear that we don't know about. But we need to ensure that if we are using electric, we've got to make sure that we've still got the continuity of supply of that, or maybe we might be looking at hydrogen or other modes of fuel. So we need to keep a flexible approach, which is why we need to see what may transpire from using HVO as we go further down the line.
Thanks. So just picking up on the staff business travel point, a lot of that, the reason why it's going in the wrong direction is demand in adult social care and health and children's. So it's demand led, face to face. So whilst we're sort of trying to work, and we've had a piece of work going on across the authority to drive that down, that's been going, that has been going in the wrong direction, and it is something that we're focused on and we're having ongoing conversations to address. In terms of the point around fleet, yeah, absolutely, it's a gradual approach. It's a test and learn phase. So yeah, we've got a large fleet at the moment. We've got some fairly significant old vehicles in there. So it will be and it will be very, very expensive to, change these vehicles. It's sort of 3 times the price of the conventional diesel vehicle at the moment. So there's a balancing act to be had, balancing the finances between and environmental impact. But we continue to go on that gradual approach. And yeah, we're absolutely looking around at other local authorities. Nottingham City, for example, are users of HVO and have got a big store up the road there. We're talking to them. But also colleagues at VIO have been leading the way in terms of vehicles and fleet management. So we've had lots of conversations with them. So it is that gradual approach that you described.
Thank you.
Decarbonisation of the estate.
One more question.
It's a very big and complex estate, I think, is probably what we'd say. I think that's 400 odd buildings, I think, at the moment. Quite a bit of uncertainty around how that's used and going to be used going forward. So, whilst we certainly do have some idea around the 4 buildings, what we don't have is a blanket across that 400 buildings and knowledge of how to decarbonise all of them. The strategy has been very much around a fabric first approach in terms of building, so improving the environmental credentials by improving the insulation, glazing, airtightness, etc. of those buildings in the first instance. But when buildings are being refitted, receiving much higher standard of environmental construction in the first place. Obviously, that's very much reliant on that investment in the estate, and at the moment, because of the size of it, and let's be honest, the amount of money would be required to invest, we're having to concentrate that into key buildings. And again, Oak House is an example, because this building is a real drain, bad carbon emitter, as you would expect, because of when it was constructed, how it's just some of the simple things like the windows. Just that move to a new purpose design, modern, BREEAM, excellent standard building at Oak House will make a massive difference in itself. But we have been doing lots of buildings as we've gone along where they know anyway. And so that investing in heating systems, etc., is happening anyway. But actually just knowing how much it would cost to do that many buildings is a massive task in itself.
Eric.
Yeah, just to build on that, I think it's a really legitimate question. I think kind of alluded to kind of probably where we are, and we're taking quite a pragmatic approach and to a certain extent a sort of opportunistic approach to improve the estate that we've got when and where we can, levering in external funding when and where we can. I think the actual act of costing up what it would mean to convert all of our buildings to net zero, as you said, is significantly expensive. And at the moment, we've probably made a bit of a choice that what we'd rather do is rather invest in estimating the cost, invest in actually doing some of the work in some of our higher risk buildings. But I think it's a legitimate question to ask. I mean, the answer is you can't afford the cost, given our current resource envelopes. So we kind of know the answer to a certain extent. But I think putting an envelope around it is always something that's going to be useful. We just need to find a way to do that in a way that's affordable, not so labour intensive and technically complex that it becomes a significant job just to find the money to do the work in the first place, if that makes sense.
Happy?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the question for the future is, will you ever get around to assessing the entire estate in terms of cost and time scales? That's what I mentioned. You'd rather spend the money on actually fixing the buildings, which is fair enough. I suppose if that's one of the challenges that are going to keep coming up in this report every year, it may be worth some point putting down, actually, I don't think we'll ever get to the point where we can cost the entire estate.
And I think that's a fair question and a good point. And I think as well as we contemplate the fact that the council or a unitary council's estate in 2028 will change significantly and will include housing stock going forward. The act of kind of costing and managing what a move to net zero from a perspective would be in a unitary setting, and not to mention other assets that would come into a unitary council, leisure provision, community provision, and so on. That makes that task even more complex and challenging. So it may absolutely might want to take a bit of a position on that. There's more opportunistic than just accept that that's where we are.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Fold.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, right, okay. Something a little bit different here. I mean, I'm concerned about actually how committed we are and how we demonstrate that we're committed to kind of climate change and tackling CO2 emissions. So the question is, to what degree could environmental impact be built into a council contract? I know it's there, and I know it's kind of listed under statutory and policy considerations, but how actually baked into our procurement policy and our kind of policies more generally is tackling climate change?
Wants to pick that up?
So we are doing a piece of work with our procurement colleagues. Obviously, we've got the new procurement standards coming in, so that we are going to start looking what we call like our scope 3. So all those contracts, suppliers, to hopefully embed more and ask from them. It's captured within all of the social value aspect, but the idea is to have that weighted higher with the contracts rather than it just being on the other kind of cost elements of that. So there is a piece of work happening, starting around that to start to look at those wider emissions.
I think it would be good to have a feedback on that, wouldn't it?
Feedback to the, especially with the social value aspect.
Indeed, well, the whole of the social value, including environment. Thank you.
Yeah, just to come back on that, we college will recall, members will recall when we brought the extension items for both the ARC and the buyer contracts to overview back in the autumn, I think it was.
October, yeah.
Both reports made quite significant mention of social value, and what we're looking to do, I think, at some point in the late spring or over the summer or autumn, once we've got new administration in place, is perhaps bring back to the relevant committee or cabinet a broader corporate social value report that will cover off our kind of contractual procurement arrangements and how they add social value to not just the council but to Nottinghamshire and our residents as well. And significant within that, Kate, will be that question around environment and sustainability, because obviously it's a significant part of that social value equation.
It would be good as well if I could just add as well in terms of partners, because the list of partners is just a quite kind of small kind of list of quite the big organisations. Actually, how that can develop around the whole of our partners across the county. That might be a bigger piece of work, but if you don't do that, then you're never going to get kind of a proper.
We can put the social value into the contract, can't we, with those providers?
And that's already that's in there in a significant way. I think Alex is right. There's always more we can do to draw out and questions around environment and sustainability. And of course, it's easier in some contractual settings than it is in others. Of course. Our work with ARC, generally, achieving net zero through our buildings is straightforward and obvious in terms of an ambition. Much harder with some of our other contract arrangements, particularly if you think about our contracts around adult and children's social care.
Yeah, cool. Happy? Glenn, Councillor Guilford?
Yeah, just following up from one of the councillors earlier raised about knowledge around properties. I thought we did stock condition surveys of all our buildings that literally on a regular basis, because obviously we need to know what repairs need doing and we programme them for future years. Just wondering why that's not picked up then, the environmental impact issues in the stock condition survey, because you would have thought that would be the sensible time to actually put it all together. So you actually know what needs doing around the building, and that will also give you an opportunity to forward plan the costs. The other one is about the rurality of the area and travel. You know, we've not got to forget that if we've got, especially say children and people services, if they're working from say Edwinstowe, from should say Allerton or wherever, and they've got to go to Misterton or Gringley on the Hill, you're talking a considerable amount of travel that they've got to do. And to be fair, in some children's services, we've already said, especially for seeing newborn children in the home environment and new parents in their home environment, we've said that that's an imperative to at least within the first 3 months of child being born. You know, so in some respects, we want that travel to take place because we want that policy to be fulfilled. But I just wondered whether there was anything within, you know, that takes into account the rurality of Nottinghamshire and the, you know, so in some cases it can be more difficult. In particular, some of the infrastructure is not there, is it? You know what I mean? So if all our staff said, "Well, we'll go and get battery vehicles, electric vehicles to travel about," actually, if you go out into some of the sticks and say you have a forgetful moment and it's not charged, you're going to be stuck because you get at it rather than any. You know, you could be travelling 5-10 miles before there's even well, in some cases, probably further for petrol stations, they mind anything else in rural areas. So there is a logistical issue that people face as well. And I just wondered, again, if all that is pulled together, and if we get any sort of points that aren't taken off us when government are looking at things like this because of our rurality. And then the only bugbear I do have about the lighting programme, I have never noticed until now as many street lights that are on during the day. And it's probably just me in Bassett Law. I can walk down loads of streets, and I've reported it, and they take some time to get done, but the lights are on all during the day. And that niggles me, but it does if it's all the time. And I can name some of them now because I go by them that often. The streets, and they're taking some time to repair. And obviously that's a cost that we're bearing. And I don't know whether it's the fact that we haven't got enough people to go out. They're too busy repairing the ones that are say out, which is really important because you don't want dark streets. But there are a considerable number of columns in Bassett Law that are lit during the day.
Maybe they've seen the light. I don't know.
Probably.
I don't know the answer to that, Chairman.
I didn't know if there was an issue that was my comment. Wasn't an issue with the LEDs or whatever, because it just seems that the number seems to be
Mark might be able to answer you.
a significant. What I would say would be significant. And I'm talking. I can name 4 or 5 streets now where there are lights on.
Yeah, so with the LED lights, there is an issue with some of the bulbs that have been fitted. So there's action being taken against the supplier of those bulbs and then covering the costs. So that's a piece of work that Via East Midlands are undertaking at the moment. So yeah, there is a problem. There is an issue there. We're aware of it, and there's work going on.
I know there's issues all around the county with certain. I mean, my villages, we've got the ornamental lanterns and a few of them, and now we can't get the replacement. So we're looking at the residents love their ornamental lanterns. They don't want to go to LED, so we've got to look at some alternative. But you don't just want to go and replace one column, do you? You've got to look at them all holistically. But we're on it. Councillor Kerry.
Yes.
If it's not been covered already. No.
Just one a question about.
They didn't answer my question on the royal.
Sorry.
So perhaps pick up on the
Sorry.
Staff travel. So
Condition surveys. Well, to be honest, they've been very much based around making sure compliance is adequate. So they're not looking at betterment. They're looking at making sure things are safe and operationally safe. So it is a significant step up in the amount of work that Derek said before. To actually look at the fabric of the building to decide how best to to invest in it to make it more energy efficient, from checking that it's just safe and not put down and not put asbestos numbers or things that's discussed. So it is quite a significant piece of work to actually do that on the top. That has been done for a number of our buildings. So Captain is one example, but quite a few of the other buildings have now had a full detailed 3D type survey done, so they can actually model better what needs to be done to those buildings to make that happen. But again, it's getting that balance between, you know, the economics of actually knowing what you need to do, as against trying to spend the money on actually just doing it where you get that opportunity to do it. But yes, absolutely, condition surveys are done regularly, but they are quite basic in terms of what you do at the moment. And it is a significant jump in terms of the requirement for time and effort for the surveying team, and actually the speciality of the people that need to look at them in order to get to a better knowledge of where to invest to make it better. Because it's back to that investment gets returned. Really.
Okay. Councillor Carey, do you want to come in with your question?
Yeah, just a question about our EV.
Oh, was it? Oh, was another part? Oh, rurality. We'll get to you in a minute, Eric. Sorry, we're going to talk rurality now.
We'll tell you when.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, rurality is an issue. We had the staff travel programme that was looking at all these factors. I say the driving point is the fact that demand is going up in children, is going up in adults, and there's got to be often journeys at short notice and going into all across the county. So it's going to be, that's an ongoing area of work that's been staff travel programme to think about, where can infrastructure be put. We've done a couple of pilots, I think that's mentioned in terms of the high mileage use teams and electric vehicles use of teams. But again, at the moment, the need for so many people to do so many miles in all sorts of different people makes that. You can do it in some areas, but it's not. You can't roll it out all across into every office. So, but the work continues to try and encourage people to think about. We've got the travel hierarchy as well, haven't we? We've sorted out some other things in terms of how can members of staff get bus tickets more easily? How can etc. We're working on a whole range of things to try and drive down staff mileage. But the reality is a real challenge for us.
And it's worth saying as well, particularly for those, because the majority of colleagues across the council who travel the most on a work basis are in adults and children's social care teams, or social workers, or other care professionals. And so what we're absolutely not trying to do is to encourage them to not see families in their home, to not have face-to-face contact with service users. What we're trying to do is to decarbonise the travel that they need to do. And you're absolutely right to raise that question in rural and more isolated parts of the county. That's a kind of logistical challenge for us that small local authorities don't face. But I wouldn't want members to think that we're trying to encourage care professionals not to visit people in their home, because obviously that is critical and important.
Thank you. That is covered off now, isn't it, Glenn?
It is. Thank you.
Councillor Carey.
Thank you, Chairman. EV charging point usage. I've not seen any reports on how much they're being used. We invested in them across the authority, obviously. Are we happy with the amount of uses they're getting, or is there any ways of encouraging more? Secondly, and that's on paragraph 18, where you mention electricity in buildings and street lighting, etc. Interesting that the grid carbon intensity increased by about 7%, I believe, 22, 24. I find that difficult to believe. In fact, we're trying to reduce the grid carbon intensity, and that's what that's done, is eaten up all of the savings that we've made in terms of electricity actual usage. So can you explain how that can be? And the other point being, is there any price differential between less carbon intense electricity and green electricity, for example? Any price difference? Is that making you make the decision about which you're buying during the cost of power?
So, do you want to start with EV charging point?
So we have EV charge points in terms of our office estate, only a few offices. Obviously we've got County Hall, we've got some of our outdoor education centres now, and we've got some just gone in at Longview House and the County House. So the use of them is only just been taken up. They're predominantly, apart from the county halls, being used by fleet vehicles that have now moved to electric. And obviously there's going to be a number at Oak House as well. So there is the infrastructure starting to be built there, but we don't actually have the data, I suppose, yet of how that use is going. Those points have just been installed over the last 6 months. Obviously, we do have the wider Levi scheme that's underway. That's obviously more outward facing. It's going through a procurement exercise to roll them out for more residential.
Yeah. And then in terms of the grid, I mean, that goes back to the index factor, doesn't it? In the sense that it is what it is. So it's based on a particular time period. And at that time, there was low wind around the country, so that meant there was less wind power, more use of coal that was in the grid. So the county council couldn't do anything about that. But obviously, the true impact of that, as you said, it wiped out the lower usage purely because it was dirtier electricity that's being used. Hopefully, though, we'll get the benefit of it in future years when there is more wind power. So therefore, although we didn't see the reduction in this particular time period, going forward in future years, that will hopefully come to fruition. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to say about that particular.
It's probably just worth touching on that because it sounds very simple. It wasn't windy, so therefore there's no electricity. The issue has been around storage of that electricity, so that it is windy, but it's windy when people don't want the electricity. So that's why you're seeing all these battery storage facilities becoming more the norm. Actually, that can then keep that electricity until people want it. Again, decarbonising the grid is a combination of wind power and solar and whatever else. It's been very biased around the wind generation, which is obviously very specific to certain times of day. Solar, if you get weeks like we've had like this, it's great, won't it? But you can get a bit hot.
So it needed to be windy at half time in international football matches.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And when correlation storm comes on. Yeah. So it's a challenge, but that battery storage is where the grid is actually now being better used. Exactly by doing the grid's got lots of capacity constraints in certain places. But if it can store that electricity application, and then release it gradually, it's where that asset is a lot better. That's what's happened across the industry. To expand. It was just a bad year
So you're not specifically procuring green energy then?
As an organisation, we changed to a green tariff
right
3 or 4 years ago. There's a slight increase on that. I can't remember. So I think Councillor Girling might have signed that one at the time. It was marginal. I know you. We did move that switch. I think there's been some moves in some areas within the council off of that tariff slightly, where there has been a significant financial impact as a result of that, because they've obviously been having to manage budgets as well as the wider footprint. I think the estate stuff is still on the green tariff, so that's a big bulk of what we're trying now to manage.
I do have in response to your comment about the batteries, I'm not necessarily totally happy with all the battery farms because there are other serious environmental issues that battery storage creates, not just in the environmental way the lithium and all those things are mined, but also in terms of where the battery farms are put in. So I'm not totally sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We haven't got a perfect solution yet to any of these things. We're like the HBO discussion. HBO we know isn't the best thing we could do, but it's better than what we have. And as an interim solution, what we're trying to do is make incremental progress until we actually invest. In effect, the grid becomes sufficient capacity to manage that. The vehicles, the electric vehicles, can take the range that's required for a grid or a bin lorry from the district perspective, etc. Because they're not there just yet.
And they're twice the cost, aren't they? That's the other thing. Buying those battery vehicles are twice the cost, which is the other thing.
And they're a lot heavier.
They are a lot heavier.
Can't manage.
Thank you.
Glenn, you want to come back to
Yeah,
it?
just two, I was just surprised, I did mark it down on my paper. I was just surprised that we didn't put a turbine in at Oak House when within the, to actually utilise that at the time, because we own the land. And, so it would have been maybe something. I mean, obviously, we've got B&Q that have got, they've been workshop that use turbine there, and they swear by the fact that the turbine there sort of.
Did they turn down your recommendation at the time? Did they turn down your recommendation at the time? Was it?
I think they did, to be honest. Yeah. So, and then the other thing is just at paragraph 31, in relation to the pilot approach about environmental and sustainability officers consider it when the impact on projects and decisions. I actually thought that was introduced some time ago, and that was something that we were going to do. And I can't remember if it might be 2 years ago now, or when we were discussing the initial climate emergency. One of the discussions that came out was that we would now, in our policy and decision making, we were taking to the fact the environmental impacts. And if you actually look at the statutory and policy implications of all the reports, it actually says that we've took into blah 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 blah, and apart from smarter working, sustainability and the environment where such implications are material. So they're supposed to be taken into consideration now. Just wondered why we're coming up with somebody saying it's a pilot. I thought we were doing it as the norm on everything that we were doing.
So it's absolutely the case in the kind of statutory and policy implications section of our report writing template. We have a section for environment and sustainability. And of course, it's at the discretion of individual report authors, which elements of the various sections that they complete. What we've done from an environment sustainability perspective more broadly is very reasonable about how to support colleagues across the council who will write reports, which of course come at the end of a piece of work to formulate a proposal or a programme or a project. So that we kind of build in environment and sustainability considerations right at the start of that thinking, and they can been central to kind of rolling that out. We do some pilot work within place because, of course, within the place department, a lot of our activity has got very direct environmental and sustainability implications. So we do a piece of work within place to kind of build that tool, for want of a better word, into our thinking around not just report writing, but also the construction of projects and programs themselves. But what we want to do is to make sure that in doing that, we report that to members who are making decisions about whatever the proposal might be, so that we make the environment much more kind of front and centre in decision making than perhaps it has been in some cases over the last few years.
Thank you. Well, I always thought that was the reasoning behind it. The implication, I thought that if we'd have put that in, that they would be considering them at the time that the decision. I know that the report writer of the report will be writing, but he would have, or she would have, said to the department, right, when you're considering doing this project or whatever, what are the environmental implications? As much are what are the legal implications, as of what are the others, and what we do is we then sign that off at the end, saying that we've taken them into consideration. So I didn't think it was discretionary, and I thought that was part of the policy decision making, and that was, I took it as that was done, so that every report, every policy, every project would take those issues into consideration. And that all we were formally doing, for me anyway, was we're actually putting it into our report so that members could see that had been done. So basically what you're telling me is we don't do that.
I think what you've described there, Glenn, is the ideal world.
I always live in an ideal world.
And what I'm describing is how, from a carbon reduction perspective, we can get in front of the report writing process to ensure that colleagues build into their early thinking about a project or a programme or an activity issues around the environment and sustainability, because it's not quite in the DNA of the organisation yet, in the way that colleagues who are thinking about something will think, is this legal? Is it lawful for us to do that? Obviously, that's a starting consideration. We're not quite in that space around this topic, so we want to get it into that space.
Okay. I regret it because I thought, well, that's what to were, but never mind.
Okay, Tom, you got anything to comment?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. One, I suppose, direct point and one more broader point. One, obviously, in September 2024, the County Council declared a policy against solar panels on farms, which I wouldn't say I completely disagree with. But how does this policy align with the Council's broader climate change and carbon reduction goals, particularly considering the potential of solar energy to help achieve carbon neutrality by 2030 or 2029, I suppose, in our case now? So that's, I suppose, a direct question. But then the next question, which I know, Alex, we spoke directly earlier in the week about, and I apologise to sound like a stuck record, but with the spectre of LGR, I'm very keen to make sure that the County Council, first and foremost, directs our resource at county, but also actually can achieve something with climate change. Because I have mixed feelings often about how public bodies go about climate stuff, and my perspective's changed very recently. Good news, I know Councillor Mike Adams knows about it already, but me and my wife, we found out we're starting a family, and I think when you start thinking, members around the table will have families themselves, but your perspective does change. I'm not afraid of saying it has changed personally. You start thinking about what we're going to leave for them. But then I also think about my constituents now who are struggling. Particularly Ashfield, we've got a proud mining heritage, provided jobs and energy to the county. Of course, the county had one of the last remaining coal-fired powered stations in the country as well. But then you've also got to balance that with the environment. But there is a significant financial cost, and I think Councillor Adams made the point about electric vehicles. Electric bin lorry at Ashfield Council costs £500,000. We have one. They're expensive. They don't last the 4-day week. They don't work properly, but they're environmentally the right thing to do. But it's a lot of money for the taxpayer. So I suppose my very direct question is, what are we doing to make sure that we do have one eye on the fact that we're living in a cost of living, but then a second eye on actually having a meaningful effect on climate change as a Nottinghamshire County Council, bearing in mind we only have 3 years left, and how are we directing some of those resources at a more short-term perspective of a lifelong generational issue, I suppose.
Neil?
Just to pick up on the policy issue, because it's probably slightly political, but it's not a question of a policy so much as a preference or an ambition. It's a bit like planning applications. You treat them on their merits. So where it is appropriate to approve an application for such a scheme, then okay. But there are plenty of places on there where people don't think it's appropriate. So it's more a question of, as I say, just using a preference rather than, it's not a specific policy that it is black and white. It's got to take in lots of factors rather than just that black and white approach.
Was it a question or more of a comment?
Well, obviously, Councillor Clark, you're on the button more than I am with these things. We're in the department, but I understood it was a policy, but maybe I'm wrong. It was certainly a clear decision that Nottinghamshire County Council was against solar farms, and obviously it's good to hear that your perspective of that is a case by case preference. Yeah, thank you. So that is good to hear.
Okay. Right. Congratulations, anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any tips will be greatly welcomed. So.
Yeah. I've got two.
Wear goggles.
More people have said sorry rather than congratulations. So.
No, I wouldn't change it for the world. Okay, the recommend.
Oh,
sorry,
yeah,
Martin,
yeah, thank you. Just a few things that we've picked up. On social value, we have got that on the place work programme for July, but I'm sure during the work programme process that we'll be doing in like June that we could look to expand that to make it like broader and perhaps bring it to overview rather than place if we're looking at more broader than like ARC, Aspire, etc. Electric vehicles and the Leave On programme on the place programme for July, so that will be coming. We've had updates about that before. And then just from the meeting, I think members would like further information about the HVO fuel. And I think there's kind of like an agreement, obviously with what Derek said, that the carbon impact, environmental impact and sustainability, members kind of believe that really needs to be like brought front and centre of all decision making. So we can just make a note of that as well.
Okay. The recommendations have been moved and seconded. Can I just take a vote? All in favour? That's unanimous. I was waiting for Neil to vote then, but you don't get a vote.
Wouldn't want to vote.
Okay, just looking at the time, we've got one item left. So we're going to agenda item 7, which is waste prevention and reuse activities and targets. Again, Councillor Neil Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I'm glad you just said time because if I'm struggling for time a bit, then I might have to disappear shortly.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Sorry. As it was noted in the report, this is part of the annual delivery plan. It's about waste prevention, and I would also say waste reduction as well. I'm absolutely keen, I hope everybody else is keen to reduce the production of waste in the first place. Rather, it'd be nice if we didn't have to deal with the waste because it wasn't there. But the fact is, we do have to, and in the light of the new government simpler recycling, this has to be taken into account. The recommendations do both the recommendations refer to prevention, and I think, to be honest, whether you're a county councillor or a district councillor, I'm sure we all have the same ambition to reduce that waste as much as possible.
Thank you, Neil. Do you want to hand it over to officers?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, noting the time, I'm going to keep it short. I'm not going to do a Nigel and say no, I don't have anything else to add because that's cheating, isn't it? I think it's probably worth just pulling out.
No.
Sounds excellent.
Pull out a couple of things from the.
Yeah, thanks, Mick.
Oh, is that really the time?
Okay, right.
Pull out a couple of things from the report just to say on paragraph 5, there was a draft paragraph from the EC. That's been amended slightly in the going to committee next week, cabinet next week for approval. Keep the gist of the wording, but the wording slightly different now. It's number 94 on the latest version of the plan, but it does leave reduce overall waste arising as a key priority within that target. Make sure that it's still front and centre. Just in terms of pulling out the waste hierarchy as well, obviously, just to make sure people are familiar with the hierarchy. We work for that all the time. It's a key principle behind waste management in the country. So prevention at the top. Yeah. Don't create waste in the first place, because manufacturing, purchasing, or just whatever you can do to not create it, because that's got massive environmental benefits, obviously, in terms of not needing raw materials, not needing energy, etc., process to produce things, but also it actually means that when it does get discarded down the line, there's a lot less of it for us to deal with, and the cost of dealing with waste for ourselves and the environment, and obviously preparing for reuse obviously is helpful. We all have probably had experiences of goods that we bought a long time ago that lasted 10, 15 years, and then when you end up replacing it, the next one only lasts 5, and that's the nature of the world that we've been living in, and clearly there's a significant opportunity there to try and improve both manufacturing processes as well as the opportunities to repair and reuse things that you've already got rather than replace. Recycling, we all know about recycling. And then other recovery and disposal are the worst of the options around the waste hierarchy. So recovery is, in effect, in a lot of ways using energy from waste to deal with waste. Disposal tends to be simple, good old-fashioned landfill, which obviously none of us want, and none of us want to see close to us either. It's probably worth just picking out a couple of things in. So on prevention, we do a lot of work around that, particularly around food aid waste. And there's a piece of work that's happened soon, Food Waste Action Week, which is 17th of March, which obviously is going to be around encouraging people to buy local, buy fruit and veg individually, not in big bags, not in buy one, get one free from the supermarket. Some of that is about that messaging for people to, not only does that help the environment, but actually it's more cheaper. And I go back to your point on around cost of living crisis. Actually, sometimes doing the right thing helps in all sorts of ways, not just to create less waste. It actually saves you money, not buying things that you then chuck in the bin to replace it, because that's pointless for everyone. I will pick out just the tables in the report, just so that you can see some of the variation. Table 1 is about recycling performance across the county. We still have significant variation in recycling performance. Better than it has been. I have to say that differential has decreased over time. At one point, there was a significant 25% difference between better and worse performers. That has changed. The worst performers are improving, and the better performers are struggling, not so much because of their inability to recycle things, but because of lightweighting. So some of the things that are coming out around bottles being thinner, glass bottles being thinner, everybody reading the newspapers on the pads or the phones or the tablets now rather than buying paper newspapers. Some of those things have a significant impact on the amount of waste that's available for recycling within the current stream. But again, that's good because it's moving away from that production of stuff that you can't do much with. This table, there's a diagram around the sort of circular economy on there, which is where the government are at the moment, particularly with simple recycling and extended producer responsibility, which is about trying to make industry take more responsibility, financial responsibility, for managing waste in a suitable way. Thinking more about how they produce things, what they produce, how recyclable that is, and actually whether the materials they're using are creating environmental damage. The extended producer responsibility funding that's now coming online and we'll be getting from 25, 26, and going forwards, is very much based around what is in effect a tax on producers, and that's therefore being recognised that they should be paying more for producing goods that are harder for us as local authorities to manage. So that whole virtuous circle of circular economy, making sure that production is right, thought through, that people's purchasing options and decisions are right in order to manage waste in a more sustainable way. And actually then our processes and our ability to collect waste and process it and deal with it down the line all fit together into the circular economy model is really good that we're actually finally moving to that practically by putting some money into the system that will drive that change over time. Again, just on table 2, I think it's really important to point out from a Nottinghamshire perspective that back in 2002, 2003, which was when I first came into it, nothing to do with me being here, let's be honest, but when I first came into the waste side of the county council, we were landfilling around 70% of our waste last year, and last year was an exceptional year, to be said, but we only landfill 1% of our waste. So we've done a massive change there in terms of our performance at the county level. And again, for those that know the county well, and particularly some certain areas where we used to have a significant number of landfill sites, I think there's only one landfill in the county now that's accepting minimal amounts of waste. So that's a real big change for the county. Where we do struggle still is the amount of waste that's produced in knots. We do generate quite a lot still. Some of that is a function of, and if you look at table 3, some of that's a function of, in fact, the amount of waste that's produced. As again, with the amount of recycled taken off divided by the number of houses. But it's quite a messy factor, in fact. But we do, as an authority, still create a lot of waste from our residents create a lot of waste that we have to manage. And we've got to try and find a way of managing that effectively going forward. Simpler recycling without that. I think the other thing just to point out is that we work a lot with our partners already. The waste collection authorities in Nottinghamshire all collect the same type of material in different coloured bins, but the same type and mix of material for recycling. With the exception of Rushcliffe and Bassetlaw, everyone already collects glass at the curbside. And Bassetlaw are both planning to roll this anyway. So that will be consistent. And now a chargeable green waste collection service. So we are very consistent already. Taking us into LGR, that will actually help because generally the systems and operational models that all the district councils operate are quite similar. So amalgamating those and integrating them into the one system is probably within grasp. Whereas I know in Derbyshire, they have a myriad of different models reflecting waste at curbside at the district and borough level, which is going to be really hard to integrate into one tier of service. So just to pull that out. And what I would say is thank you to Emily for doing the report, because it's no mean fast feat to pull all this into one report that makes some sort of sense. It's hard. And actually, we've suggested a few things that we can do, particularly around reuse and our organisational approach to promoting prevention and reuse. So making sure that when people use our recycling checker online or use our A to Z, the waste A to Z, the highest bit of the hierarchy is always the first choice. So if somebody goes on and said, I want to do this, I've got this to get rid of, the first option might be, have you thought about reusing it? Have you thought about having it repaired? Have you thought about donating furniture to a furniture project before you go and take it to a recycling centre? Because at the moment, it's a guide to our service rather than necessarily a guide to the best practice. And I think we can tweak it. Yeah, there's a few things we can do. There's a few recommendations there, and I'll say questions and observations on what we've done.
Good job, you didn't have much to add.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Neil.
You've got to go as well. Okay,
Yeah.
we're getting depleted now.
I'm going to have to go in a couple of minutes.
Thank you, Mick. Just before I open it up for debate, I'm going to move the three recommendations as set out on page 64. Seconder?
Yeah, second it.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Adams. Councillor Trona.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've already mentioned the two outliers in the recycling rates. One significantly lower, one significantly higher than the averages. And I did know, I think it's paragraph 33, where there's the mention that both Bassetlaw and Rushcliffe, that the two outliers, neither of them collect bottle waste. From the table, it shows that there's a big proportion or relative to Rushcliffe, relative to Bassetlaw on composting waste. But what are we doing? Because Bassetlaw, whilst you say it's improved, it's about 1% percentage points from when I was on the place committee. I think then it was 26.8 or something like that. What are we doing to actually action getting improvements there? Or what can we do to incentivise the districts to improve? We just learn from each other.
Well, we've done quite a lot over time in terms of incentivisation with Newark and Nashville to promote green waste collections particularly. We also supported Mansfield with their glass collections a couple of years ago. Simpler recycling will be helpful because it's putting money into not just our system, into theirs as well. So in terms of actually providing additional curbside services, there will be more money in the system going forward through those EPR payments. Helpful. I think Bassetlaw's challenge has always been that rurality to some degree. It's really hard to collect some of that material. So if you look at the glass, which Rushcliffe and Bassetlaw are both going to be rolling out, at the moment they both provide that through a bring bank service. But Rushcliffe collect double the amount of Bassetlaw simply because it's a much more compact urban type environment in a large part. I appreciate it. Possibly rural.
Okay, but Bassetlaw's no more rural than Newark and Sherwood.
No, it's not. But Newark and Sherwood have now got curbside glass service as well. I think some of it is down to procedures at the curbside as well. I think you'll know, obviously, that Basketball recently, I think over the last couple of years, have done some work around making sure that their policies on bin collections are consistent. So making sure that bin lids are closed before they collect, and that causes a lot of noise in itself. But actually allowing that overflow for the bin can add significantly to the capacity available to them. It's quite a challenge for us. We've battled with this for 20 odd years now as to why, given a service in effect on paper is very consistent across the county, why is the actual outturn significantly different? Clearly there are differences in demographics, as you'd expect, but this certainly is an interesting challenge still with certain authorities, and it's not just Basketball, around how to encourage recycling and actually encourage people to purchase things in a different way in order to maximise the opportunities to recycle rather than actually, we've got the opportunity by having the bin, but actually using those bins effectively is quite a challenge in some places. I don't have an easy answer. If I did, I'd have sorted it 20 years ago, but we have tried to do that. We still continue to work with all of them to share best practice, make sure the information that's being provided is consistent. But beyond that, it comes down to the districts. And that will be one of the strengths of LGR, in the fact that we can make sure down the line that consistent approach. And actually picking and choosing, because we know some people are really good at some of this and some aren't, making sure that we're following best practice in the appropriate areas is going to be really, really important, and hopefully will lead to a more consistent approach and outcome eventually.
Thank you. The other mic, Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Cheers. Just a couple of points. Thanks again for the report. Just on the food waste recycling, I know where we are with that. It's been something we've been talking about for a while. It was I'm interested to know what stage we're at with that, how that will be coming forward, and if that is going to happen before we get into LGR, or if we are waiting for that. And also another curbside question is around glass. I've seen a report recently, and I think it might be related to Rushcliffe, because they don't have curbside and they use these big tubs, if you like, with different colours, that they get more money for their glass recycling. Yeah. Is there any curbside bin that can enable that same situation but at the curbside? And if so, are we looking at it, and is it something that you plan to build in later on? Or that's it really? Thanks.
Okay, so yeah, curbside glass is, you can have curbside sort, so really does require special bin, very labour intensive, so it's very difficult to do that. And the reason for the different colours of glass is that obviously there are different end processing mechanisms, but also different values. So trying to maximise those values is really important. My understanding now is that most of the glass reprocessors can actually separate colours on site. Right. Tech. Right. So actually, whilst separating out at the curbside is good, actually the tech allows that to happen now at the reprocessor. So that minimises the front end cost in terms of collection, because you do put it into one bin, into one vehicle, and then when it gets to Cresco or wherever it is, the equipment will now allow them to do that. So that's hopefully.
So that's an earner potentially for us then, because I think I read Rushcliffe got £1 million out of that.
Yeah,
right.
At the moment the districts collect that money.
Yeah.
They retain
the
money from that. Obviously down the line,
not $1 million.
Combined authority or anything like that. But it is an earner.
Yeah.
It's absolutely worthwhile retaining that value. And I do just say on that, I know a number of the districts are already talking to each other. Their contracts for the glass are all coming to an end. They're trying to roll that into bigger arrangements and get better value.
Yeah. Food as well.
Food is happening October 2027. Not. Districts have got to start doing food curbside for trade customers as of this year.
Right. Okay.
Thank you, Neil.
The next 3 weeks, and their arrangements are all in place for that. Set that food off to anaerobic digestion plant 1 in your patch, which is the biodynamic one.
7 Trent site.
It's the one at Colic.
Which one's that? I don't know.
The site just down behind Envar there.
Oh, right. Okay, it's not streets. Okay.
Some of it's going. Yeah,
What's their name again? So, what's the name of them again?
Dynamic. Some of it's going to biodynamic, and some of it is going to sell and transport to their Derby Rangeway site.
Can I look at that?
The trade food is happening 3 weeks' time. That's all set up. It's very small tonnages, but it's there as well as October 2027. We're still working through that. We're probably going to be using those same sort of outlets.
Maybe bins.
But it'll get, it'll be caddies. A lot of the districts have already bought caddies, ordered caddies and bins now. That'll roll out, say, October 2027, and we'll be going for anaerobic digestion rather than anything else.
Thank you. That's great.
Jim?
Yeah, just a couple of general questions. On the actual hierarchy, doing everything right, pointing people to other use. Do we actually advertise and do we know where the repair camps are? Because there's 1 or 2 repair camps opening up in various places. So do we encourage them in any way and then point to them as an option?
We've not done particular. We do know they're happening. That's all we'll advertise again the other day. It's coming back. Obviously, from our side, but we've just got to be careful with the repair campaigns. Wrong. Yeah. So it's nice doing projects, making sure that they're appropriate and are managing things properly. We've just got to be careful of that. And we are signposting people. We do know that repair campaigns. So we'll obviously try and promote those where we can. And it's relatively new, and obviously we're looking at opportunities for ourselves as well. Wider work around networks and stuff as well going forward.
And just a general, the last one, just a general one. Brilliant. We've gone down to 1% of 1% landfill. Just using one site. Just for information, which site is that? And will it be available for the next few years? 1% is 1%. If next year. So it's very contingency.
We don't use the one site in the county anymore because one site I think that's operational on
Forest.
That's a long way out, so we don't use that. We use the only site in Rugby, so those small villages now. If the 1% was excellent last year, it's probably nearer 45. Still only 200,000, so it's not but we in effect local arrangement. We quite really good last time because when they got that waste, when it was shut down at East Cross, Browns, they actually managed to store the energy for that place. It does have to go to land because everybody does it 2 times all at the same time. That's how the industry works. Obviously, from our side, some of those sites are the only ones in Rugby. We use a couple of FCC sites, so there is still available. We're good in using all of our neighbours.
Jim, I'll bring Glenn in.
Yeah, just on, obviously you talked about the buying loose products, food, right? In some respects, one of the problems that you find is that some chains provide a carrier to put it in. Others, you have to purchase one and don't have anything about. So it puts people off. So you're like, you go in one chain, you can pick a paper bag up, fill your stuff, go off. Go in the other one, and if you haven't got anything with you, and they won't let you put it in a normal bag or anything like, because they want to obviously see that it's a product that they're selling, and it really makes it difficult. So it would be good if the chains said, right, we want to encourage this, because actually it's cheaper as well. As you say, not only do you buy what you're going to use, but also it's cheaper when you buy the product. Sometimes you have to buy more than what you need because it's in a cellophane bag. Yeah. But so it would be good if there was some consistency with the chains on the provision of a bag to put it in. Just an observation. 20 years ago, it might be a bit longer, Bassett Law was at the forefront, probably leading, not behind, it was leading on it. They trialled in this area, they trialled the first glass collection, and they also trialled food waste. Food waste got stopped because of BSE, because the place where they were sending it was actually to farms. They got farmers who said, oh yeah, we'll use that, and then all of a sudden, environmentally BSE come into Okay, and they said, oh, we can't do that because of the food stuff that is animal waste, meat and stuff like that, and we're feeding it back to animals. So that literally went, and I don't know, I can't remember what happened with the trial on glass. I think it was probably too expensive at the time. Yeah, but I think the thing that you got to me, I put down here, but you answered the question. I've noticed with what I take, that they've gone from designated bins or colours to separate glass collection. And I just thought, oh, they're getting around because the number of people that used to do that anyway. So nobody, they used to never put a bottle in the green bottle, a white bottle in the green bottle, and then make it a difficult thing at the end of the day. But I didn't realise that they've sort of altered that, and that's good news, that they've developed that, because that, really makes sense now when I go and empty it. But yeah, disappointing to see. I would say, well, that they were at the forefront of environmental issues 20 years ago. It's unreal.
Again, we recognise that priorities of local areas, aren't there? Local authorities make individual decisions on what they prioritise and where they put their investment. And we work within the CTM model at the moment, working in really good partnership with all of the districts, and a really good relationship. But it's not the same as one organisation making those decisions with a holistic approach to it, is it? Will change.
My only other thing about one of the reasons why I think there was a report is because they also paid for an officer to educate, and we worked with Tidy Britain groups at the time, to educate individuals, children and adults about the need to recycle and reuse. And because of the changes within food waste and things like that, I just wondered what's being done to actually, because it's all right just saying, oh, we're going to do this collection. But you've got a lot of elderly people out there who find that a change. Yeah. And probably won't understand that there's an additional bin now and they've got 2 bins. That, I don't know how that's going to work yet. And when you're going to collect that as opposed to this. For me, I don't know what the authorities as a whole have put out to try and educate them about it. Because that's the main thing that people just don't know. And sometimes you need to drive in that, who's got the enthusiasm and the wherewithal to go into various places and to talk to individuals, to go to community groups and explain what these changes mean. And to be honest, I don't think anybody's doing that. I've not picked that up.
Yeah, there are Ashfield, give them real credit for that. They have a waste officer that goes out and does that. But actually within that EPR payments, extended risk responsibility that everyone's going to receive, there is an expectation that money will be spent on education. That's happening. That's going to happen over the next few years now. As that money comes in from April, start doing that. Officers go out and make those interventions. There's also going to be quite a lot of national work being done, which is actually where we were in the early 2000s. Actually made a significant difference to take-up rates, because that's fallen off the radar a little bit nationally. It's part of the simpler recycling. Central government we're already just about to kick off a campaign around the requirements for traders, for businesses, because that's all April. In fact, we've done some of that for the districts as well, but that will accelerate nationally, and obviously locally again we'll be pulling all of that together into a consistent messaging approach for Nottinghamshire over the next.
Thank you, Glenn. Anyone else? I'll bring you in it. Yeah,
okay, sorry.
And just seeing, no one else. Most people have gone.
Yeah, the waste closes off. But no, But no, I think I'll keep it brief because I think members have all got better things to do, and I think we need to make sure we get our leaflet in afternoon to fill these green bins up to keep the recycling targets. So that's what I'll be doing. But no, I think first I'll start by I think members are aware that Ashfield are leading the way with some of this, and I know, for example, we were central with Mick with persuading colleagues cross party and an officer with persuading colleagues at Mansfield to do glass. People will be aware that taking tonnage out of the red bin, which we pay for, and selling it as glass is extremely beneficial, as has been said already, to district council budgets. And obviously Ashfield has a tougher community traditionally with demographics, how they seem to play out across the country, yet the figures show that we're leading the way in the county, and I'm proud with that. But a lot of that's come out of education, in schools, with the officers directly. We do a spring clean, and a big part of the spring clean is education. And but then this kind of leads me, and I don't make that to get hairs up because it's not a political point. I think we'll all agree that it's good. But I raise it because at every turn we face obstacles against corporate partners of the county council. So Veolia has actively stopped us doing food recycling. They've actively objected to the spring clean to the point they issued us an injunction because we were collecting their waste. And I also know the Veolia have objected to the way the county council try and encourage people to recycle with charity shops because they want their waste going into their centres so they can sell bikes. And it's not going to go over members' heads that they make a huge profit from the contract we have directly with them, but also they make a huge profit by selling stuff that our residents take to their centres. So my first point really is, how do we encourage corporate partners to work more successfully with us rather than obstructing some of the changes we're trying to make? LGR, which I'm going to sound like again like a stuck record, concerns me. I think we're all making bin changes, but even with the bin changes, they're all going to have different coloured lids and etc. I mean, I'd ask Councillor Guilfoyle, as probably one of the members and Creamer, around the table, that probably have a better ear in government than anybody else, to surely get the left hand talking to the right. And I think waste changes need to happen, but surely making them happen after LGR would be the most sensible method, because we are going to end up with a scenario where bins are going to be changed just before councils are changed. They're going to have the wrong logos on and they're all going to be blooming different. So I do think it's creating a strain on county and local boroughs and districts right now. So there's some broader points, but I think, and I hope you've taken them constructively, because I think sometimes being an opposition member, when, let's be honest, there's broad political support for something like this, is tough. But I suppose our job is to shine a light on stuff that we kind of think could be done differently. And I think the biggest thing that I think could be done differently is, much of this is down to persuasion and education. I mean, the simple question is, why isn't the county council and government doing more to force waste producers to do more? All that be supermarkets. We have many dealings with all these corporate partners that then generate waste. Why aren't we legislating more and forcing them to do more in our contracts and in local legislation, rather than simply relying on gentlemen's handshakes and persuasion?
Well, I think the last one is that our ability to legislate for some of this is quite limited at the moment. Clearly, central government has now requirements through the Environment Act around circular economy. That is going to force businesses to think more about what they produce and how they produce it in order to manage waste, allow the management of waste more sustainably at the end. So it's actually doing at the end of that pipe with the top of it to make sure that they think about it rather than just leaving us with the problem. That's clearly what the whole circular economy process is about. It's to make things more environmentally sound and easier to reprocess down the line. I think, obviously, I hear what you're saying about Veolia, and Veolia obviously are a large corporate entity. We work with them with a long-term contract with them. They have some contractual obligations, and we have contractual obligations. Some of that is around exclusivity on waste. I think we've got a different way of working to Veolia. It can be a challenge, some of that, sometimes, as it is with any big business. But I think they're in they're a good partner overall for us. We have very good quality services and actually very low cost services in terms of our waste treatment and disposal at this point. Obviously, going forward, how that pans out through into LGR, and I appreciate what you're saying. people making individual decisions. And now, we had this discussion previously, Tom, about we've been involved in the discussion with our district partners about food waste and trade waste, food waste coming online, and obviously how that's going to work in a couple of years' time. And we know that we've all sat around as officers and said it'd be a great idea, wouldn't it? If everybody was staying full of caddies, staying full of bins, etc., so that we're all aligned. And everybody said, yeah, that's fantastic. We'll go away and do that with our portfolio holders. And then come back and say, well, no, they decided they wanted a red one or they wanted a green one. So some of that is on you as politicians. As officers, we can only try and influence those local political decisions going to be made without that sort of long-term view. We can't do anything other than keep recommending. What I would say is that we are trying to line that up with the district, with district partners already. There's a lot of work already happening around what LGR might mean and how you keep local democracy through decision making while actually having an eye on the future. Because that really is hard, and I understand that. Not being critical of it, but we can only do as much as we can. It has to come down to local politicians buying into that future. So we've got to try and do that. Obviously, going forward, a simple recycling chain does require some changes to the commercial arrangement. We are already part of those conversations, negotiations, how the service operates for the public. We probably have to do that with a balanced approach to value for money as well for us, in terms of making sure that our overall costs, which are significant, don't rise unnecessarily, asking for things that compromise the contractor's ability to, let's be honest, make a profit, because that's what they're there for. They wouldn't be doing this for the goodness of heart. They're not like us, we're not a public sector body. And that's what happened when you contract with commercial partners. You have to accept the commercial reality of the outcomes and a balanced approach to it.
Well, if Councillor Ellis, if I just come back very briefly, I mean, you won't mind me making the point that signing a 30-year contract to a big company it's never going to incentivise them to make positive changes. And I think the fights we have with Veolia are often of our own making. Give me a 30-year contract, I'll stop listening to you after the second week, because that's just the way people operate, and it's a shame. But I don't want it to take away from the work that I know you've done very well on, and I think we find a lot of agreement actually with the hard work that you personally put in, because I know Ashfield certainly appreciates what you do, and I'm sure the districts and boroughs do. But I hope some of the points I've made are taken constructively, because I always feel like we are a big corporate body. We have a lot of clout, and I'm never convinced that we use that clout as forcefully as we could. But I'm sure the points I'm making, and like I say, I thank you for the work you do. I just wish we'd take a bit of a heavier hand soon.
Derek, do you want to come back?
Just to pick up on the point around kind of local government realisation. Obviously, as the kind of models for what the future of the county will look like in a unitary sense start to emerge and get clarified over the summer and into the autumn and winter. One of the things that we anticipate doing is starting to stand up a whole range of kind of projects with district and borough partners, the relevant ones, to start to think about what the future might look like, and just think about how we might bring together services, systems, processes, etc. And obviously, waste is going to be one of the critical things in that respect, because it's obviously quite as Mick set out, quite a complex system we've got at the moment. So we're just to give members a little bit of comfort that as those models start to emerge, that'll give us a platform for starting to think properly about the future and then acting upon that.
Martin, do you want to summarise any points raised?
There's nothing that's come out from there generally, but
let's move to the vote then. All in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Work programme. Martin.
They just read to note and just kind of advise, but obviously this is the last meeting before the election, which I'm sure everyone noticed. But there will be, we'll be doing the same process as we did last year. That'll be happening in June. So we'll revisit the entire work programme, so members will get that's to suggest being informed by information from departments on plans and priorities.
Cool. Thank you very much. Mark, is this your last overview? Is your last meeting? So on behalf of myself, thank you very much.
Worth saying as well,
Yep.
Councillor O'Leary, Chair, is also
Oh, is it mixed?
mix as well.
I didn't know that one. You get that quiet.
Yeah, been trying.
Congratulations. You got out.
Yeah. Mark
Okay.
and I are leaving the centre. We're going to skip up into the sunset in the
Going to the Balkans, aren't we?
Yeah. All right.
Just far enough apart. Not to see each other.
Ronnie's. Right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you, Derek, for and the meeting now closed.